Welcome, friends. I'm Chris. I'm from Transformation Nation Yoga and Wellness. Welcome to Sunrise Yin, and this is going to be our immune system sequence 2. What I think you'll need to be safe, to be comfortable, to enjoy, to get the most out of your practice today are a yoga mat and a blanket. Blanket's not strictly necessary, but having a little more cushion between you and the earth might be really nice. I'd like you to have one, better yet, two foam or cork yoga blocks. And I'd like you to have a yoga bolster. So, in the absence of a yoga bolster, rather than substituting with a pillow or even a couple pillows, one thing that you likely have in your house that makes a nice surrogate is a couch cushion, something that gives you a little bit of resistance. So, pause your recording, roll out your mat, gather up your props, and when you're ready, press play, and I'll meet you on your mat for Sunrise Yin. All right, friends, I'll have you get started in a seated position. Now, if you did our first immune system sequence, you'll remember we began with some breath work, and it was a really specific breath work. So I would describe it as cyclic hyperventilation with breath retention, very similar to a technique that you may have heard of referred to as Wim Hof. I also shared in that same practice that with the exception of perhaps that one autonomic nervous system up-regulating breath practice, bang for your buck, another breath practice, other breath practices that are more down-regulating, that are parasympathetic nervous system activating, are going to be a better bet for your immune system for this reason. 75% of our immune system function resides in the gut. And during parasympathetic nervous system activation, the blood returns to the gut for digestion, for lots of other processes. So the breath that we're going to do today is a lymphatic breath technique. And I would call this a 4-16-8 breath technique. So what that's going to look like, it will be a 4-count inhale through your nose. For the 16-count breath retention, what I'm going to have you do is use a Jalandhara chin lock. So I will cue you to drop your chin, and you might play with this now. Drop your chin towards your chest. Lift your chest up towards your chin. We'll hold for a count of 16. Then I'll cue you to lift your chin, exhale through your mouth for a count of 8. 4 through the nose, 16 count hold with the chin lock, 8 count exhale through your mouth. So let's start with a cleansing breath. Draw in a deep, deep, juicy breath. And then open your mouth, let it go with a ah sound. And then right away, we'll roll into that breath. Inhale through your nose for 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold the breath, chin to chest, chest to chin. 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Lift your chin, exhale, mouth. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. Chin lock, hold. 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Lift chin, exhale, mouth. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, hold, exhale. Inhale, hold, exhale. Inhale, hold, exhale. Inhale, hold, exhale. You're doing great. We got one more round. Inhale, hold, exhale. Eyes are closed, body is relaxed, breath is natural. We're going to move into a seated immune system sequence. Now, this kind of movement isn't typical for a yin practice, and it can be a really nice addition. So we're going to go with this. You can do this with your eyes closed, or if you've never done this with me before, it might be best to gently blink your eyes open. But clap the palms of your hands together, rub the palms of your hands together to warm them, and then take your thumbs, plug them in, find a little indentation right under your collarbone, and then lift your elbows up toward the stars. Arch your back, lift your gaze. Inhale. Exhale, drop your elbows down toward the earth, release your chin to your chest. Inhale, lift your elbows, lift your gaze, arch your back. Exhale, elbows and gaze toward the earth, chin to your chest. Inhale, rise. Exhale, set. Inhale, rise. Exhale, set. Inhale, rise. Exhale, set. Inhale, rise and hold. This time as you exhale, keep the right elbow lifted. Lower your left elbow down toward the earth. Inhale, lift the left, lower the right. From this point forward, I'll just say change sides, 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 and change sides. Release your left hand. Take your left hand to your right armpit. Gently start to massage here. Give the interior of that elbow a nice massage, but also use your left thumb. See if you can find a little space in the flesh on the outside of that pectoral muscle that's more tender than the rest. And you can ease up on the massage. Inhale, press into your seat, grow to your heart and the crown of your head. Exhale, rotate the whole trunk of your body to the right. Inhale, center. Exhale, rotate to the right. Center. Right. Center. Right. Center. Right. Center. Good job. Leave your left hand right where it is. Release your right hand. Bring it to your chest, right above the left hand. Tap your chest. We're just warming up the thymus gland. You can come to a pause with that right hand. Take your left thumb, plug it into an indentation right under your collarbone. Lift your left elbow up toward the heavens. Right hand goes for that left armpit. Give that armpit a massage. Right, come to a pause with that right hand. Inhale, lengthen along your spinal column. Exhale, rotate the whole trunk of your body to the left. Inhale, center. Exhale, left. Inhale, center. Exhale, rotate to the left. Center. Left. Center. Left. And center. Leave your right hand where it is. Release your left hand to your chest, just above your right hand. Tap your chest. Come to a pause with that left hand. Release your right hand. Use both hands. Tap your chest. And then roll over your crossed ankles. Make your way into a tabletop shape. And we're going to start the yin portion of our practice today with quarter dog. So to start, float your shoulders over your wrists, float your hips over your knees. The goal is your hips will stay floating over your knees the whole time. Walk your hands about 3 handprints forward, and then drop your right forearm down so it's parallel to the earth. Reach your left arm long. Lower your head and your heart so the back of your head comes down, so your forehead comes down to the back of your right wrist. Now, if this is way too much sensation, place a bolster under your heart or maybe 1 or 2 blocks. Ideally, for the sensation, we're looking for a threshold between discomfort and pain. So you might think of that on a scale from 0 to 10 as something that's at least a 4 and not more than a 6. Check in with your body. Notice your current level of sensation. Notice in particular if you're getting any pinching on the top of the left shoulder. That probably is an indication you should place a bolster or blocks under your heart and lift yourself a bit up out of this pose. But if you've created some space in your body once more, you could see if you could sink your heart any amount closer to the earth. You could even maybe take that right arm a little bit forward. I do want this quarter dog shape and not a puppy dog shape. Not as a matter of course, just for our practice for today. We're going to start the transition to the other side. If you need to lift out of that, this is fine, but you could also pivot that right elbow so the right forearm reaches forward. Bring your left forearm so it's parallel to the top edge of your mat. Reach your right arm long. Once again, the goal is the hips stay floating over the knees. They may come forward, they may scoot back. Either way is okay. This is just an idealized goal. All right, we're going to start our next transition. So maybe pivot that left forearm forward, lower your hips down to the earth, come onto your belly. I'd like you to grab a bolster. And we're going to do a sphinx, but we're going to do this with a lot of support today. So rock the bolster up on its side, place it in front of your chest under the armpits, such that you can float your shoulders over your wrists, your hips over your knees, maybe place a block in between your wrists at the highest height. Everything from your lower back to the tips of your toes, see if you can relax that. And then, especially with the support of the bolster, should be very little muscular engagement. If you like, release your forehead down to your block.
So as a general rule of thumb, like the conventional wisdom on immune system, it's uncannily accurate. And I say that because we can see, like, really, I think it's a universal, really clear and convincing evidence in our lives that it's right. And the conventional wisdom is really banal. It's really banal. So these are things like this, what I would consider to be the six pillars of self-care, right? And I'll go over all of those, but if there's one of those that's a hammer in the self-care toolkit when it comes to healthy immune system function, it's getting enough sleep and quality sleep. There's a word from Ayurveda, the word is ojas, and ojas means like vitality or vigor. Well, we can think of ojas as being almost synonymous with immune system response, immune system function. And it's said that like what we know to be healthy habits, all of those build ojas, and if we abandon any of those, it depletes ojas. But if the goal was if we were optimizing to deplete ojas and really trash our immune system response, our immune system function, we wanted to live a life that was optimized for poor immune system response, what we would do is not sleep enough and not get enough quality sleep. So that's one, but also we can add to that list eating healthfully, exercising vigorously, managing stress effectively, making time and space in our lives for the people, the practices, maybe the places that are most important to us, that which is sacred. And a recent addition to I used to have 5 pillars of self-care and I've added a sixth, but it's reducing or eliminating chronic systemic inflammation. Right, so those are the things, if we want a healthy immune system response, that's what we should be doing. I mentioned when we were talking about the breath that it said that like 75% of our immune system function happens from the gut microbiome. Right, so what can we do about that? If that's 75%, and what we want to do is to optimize for immune system function, we probably should be focusing a crap ton of attention right there. So we're about to go into a rest, but after that, I'll share some things you can do to boost a healthy gut microbiome. All right, so you can start to lift up enough. You can slide your bolster out from under your heart, remove your block, lower your heart down to the earth, any resting shape on your belly. So what I'm going to take is a half frog with my arms goal posted out to the side, my gaze over to the right, and then I'll lift my right knee up in the general direction of my right elbow. That right knee doesn't have to touch the elbow. It doesn't even have to be close. And I'll keep my head a little bit lifted because otherwise it'll be tough with these earpieces for you to hear me. But if you can, I would like you to release your left temple down to your mat. Now we're going to start to lift up. So start with that right leg. Slide your right knee back down in line with your left. Bring your hands under your shoulders. Press yourself up onto your knees. And I'd like you to grab 2 blocks. And we're going to go into a shoelace pose with a neck release. So to set this up, start from a tabletop, slide the right knee to the center of your mat with your left heel angled over to the left-hand side of your mat. Walk the hands further forward, scoop that left leg forward, wrap the left knee over the right. Both knees kiss the earth, and then sit back, release your seat down to a block. Now, if this is just crazy uncomfortable, like you're above, say, a 7 on our scale from 0 to 10, any cross-legged seat is just fine, any seated position. Now, take your right hand, place it on the crown of your head,
so that the fingers of your right hand fold over and gently touch the top of your left ear. And then on an inhale, press down into your seat. Grow out of the crown of your head. Exhale, release your right ear in the general direction of your right shoulder. We're not pulling, but the hand, the forearm, that whole right arm are just applying a little bit of additional weight, guiding that right ear any amount closer toward the right shoulder. So there's lots of things that we can avoid that we know are not great for the gut microbiome, that we know are inflammatory. So gluten is a great example of that. So is anything dairy. Processed foods, you consider to be inflammatory. Refined sugars, same thing. Right, so that's what you take away, but most of us don't respond well to taking away. And while I do recommend those actions, it's hard. It's hard. It may be it may feel like a sacrifice. So maybe where you start is, instead of taking things away, is adding something. And if you were going to add something, what I would add to improve the quality and health of your gut microbiome are low sugar, small batch fermented foods. Right? So maybe miso, but certainly sauerkraut and kimchi. There was a time where kombucha would have been on my list. And I love kombucha. I love the way it tastes. I love the way it makes me feel. But as far as the taste, what I'm learning is that regardless of what the food label says, sometimes the companies are pretty unscrupulous, and the samples that get tested for nutritional analysis are cherry picked. And almost always, if it's if you can drink it, if it's something you would choose to drink, the sugar content is going to be high enough that, like any kind of gut microbiome trade-off you get, it wouldn't be a good trade. So small batch, low sugar fermented foods. Now, one that I'm experimenting with a lot in my home right now is small batch sauerkraut. And it said 4 to 5 small servings of sauerkraut a day can do wonders for the gut microbiome. It's miraculous. It's filled with, it enhances a lot of the vitamins and the minerals that were in the cabbage initially. B12, which is notoriously difficult for vegetarians to get, you get from a fermented vegetable like cabbage in a sauerkraut or a kimchi. Leaky gut syndrome, which is something that so many people suffer from, is notoriously difficult to diagnose, is repaired by eating these small batch foods. You want to go through the elimination process of some of those foods that I mentioned, and maybe some others as well. So I'm preparing, soon I'm going to be teaching a workshop on creating your own small batch sauerkraut, right? Because it's such a good wellness practice. Which means I needed to learn how to do it. Right? This is something that's new for me. So I started my first batch yesterday, and it's so much fun, and it's so easy. It's 2 ingredients, right? It's cabbage, and it's either kosher salt or sea salt. You could use either one. And then it's just time. So there is that. All right, friends. So we're going to start to make the transition to the other side. Use your right hand, draw the crown of your head up to center. Now, rock forward onto your hands. So check this out. Left leg's already where we want it. The left knee's in the center of your mat. Left heel is angled over to your right. Hands come forward. Unwind that right leg. Wrap your right knee over your left. Both knees kiss the earth. Sit back onto your block again. And again, if this isn't working for you, like if your deep six lateral hip rotators are screaming on the order of above, say, a 7 on a scale from 0 to 10, shift out of this pose and then go into any seated position. Once you've found your seat for this pose, left hand to the crown of your head, Lengthen along your spinal column. Gently fold your left ear towards your left shoulder. Interestingly, although again, I'm a big fan of these parasympathetic nervous system activating breaths, such as the lymphatic breathing that we started with. More and more, I'm also a big fan of the cyclic hyperventilation with breath retention. And I made a statement in a class a couple weeks ago that I recommend that people have this as a part of their practice during cold and flu season, maybe if they're starting to get sick, or if they're going through a season where they're just having to burn the candle at both ends and they really don't feel like they have a choice in it. But otherwise, not to have it as a regular part of the wellness practice. And what I'm learning, as I learn more about this, what I learn is this probably, it hurts nothing for us to do all the time. So in my book, long term, I've got my morning routine pretty well nailed down with either the Wim Hof breath or like a Kapalabhati breath of fire with a Kumbhak breath retention. I do one of those two practices in the morning. Long term, one of these autonomic nervous system down regulating breaths I would like to have included in my evening routine right before bed. Right? So I'd have a bit of a pranayama sandwich that really optimizes for great immune system function. And I've talked elsewhere about why that Wim Hof breath with the breath retention works. Right? So I'm not going to take up time and space with that today. From the standpoint of traditional Chinese medicine, it said that a 1 degree increase in body temperature creates a five-fold magnification of immune system response and function. Now, 1 degree is significant, right? But it's not a huge difference, right? So how do we get that? So we could get that from breath work. We could get that from vigorous exercise. We get that from food, right? So if you think about heating foods, and I'm going to tell you a story and give you another thing. I know some scientists hate the word hack, but I'm going to use the word hack, like an immune system hack that you can use that's really warming of the body. And this makes some intuitive sense. So obviously, I'm not a biologist by training, and I'm trying not to portray myself as a biologist. My academic training is in forestry, but I've read about this a lot. I've thought about this a lot as well. Like if you look at our body's response to infection, often it includes an element of fever, right? So the fever is the body utilizing this increase in body temperature in order to get greater immune system function. Now, we can have too high a temperature, and that endangers our brain cells, right? That can kill off brain cells. So this is it's a delicate balancing point. Um, During my natural resources career, I was notorious for burning the candle at both ends, pushing too hard at work, pushing too hard at home, and getting myself good and worn out to the extent that about twice a year, I would, like things would ease up at work a little bit. I'd back off a little bit and then I'd get really sick. And the cold followed a really predictable path. I'd get a sore throat and then I'd get sinus congestion and then it would descend into my upper respiratory tract. And especially with time and tenure, so I followed this pattern for long enough, that started to happen more and more. And when we get into our next shape, I'll tell you a story about something really wise, a great tool that an acupuncturist gave me that I still to this day use. It's been probably 5 or 6 years since this tool was added to my toolkit. All right, friends. So bring the crown of your head back up to center. Roll over your crossed ankles. Now here, we don't have to worry about the legs being set up. Unwind in any way that feels organic. And then make your way into a tabletop position. Floating your shoulders over your hips, floating your shoulders over your wrists rather, floating your hips over your knees.
Now we're going to go into a reaching dragon pose. So step your right foot forward, replace your right hand with your right foot. Maybe scoop that right hand behind that right heel and scoop that foot forward. Maybe tuck your toes under your left foot, walk that left knee long. Now, I would like you reaching to the outside of your right leg. Notice, like we often teach this as a twisted dragon up on the pinky edge blade of your right foot. I'm going to ask you specifically not to do that. I'd like you to keep that whole right foot glued down on your mat. And then walk both hands over to the right. So for me, this is going to be on blocks, right? So you can relax your forehead, relax your neck. So I want a little bit of a twisting action, but I also want the arms not exactly engaged, but a bit of a stretch on the bottom of the armpit. So we're trying to both reach out to the side and reach the arms out. All right, so there was a winter in particular where I got that cold that I described in the last pose. And just by happy coincidence, I was going to this acupuncturist on some other issues. And she noticed, like, I went 3 or 4 visits and I was sick the whole time. This cold, the upper respiratory bug held on like 4 to 6 weeks. And she said, "You are still sick." It's like, "Yeah, I know. I just can't shake this thing." So she told me about this tea that she recommended I start drinking. And it turned out I had everything I needed to make the tea minus one ingredient. So I stopped at the grocery store on my way home from that visit for the one ingredient I was missing. And I followed the directions. I made this tea. I drank it 4 days in a row, and the upper respiratory bug went away, just stopped. Right? Now, that sounds too good to be true. And typically, what I think is what my life experience, my felt experience leads me to believe is something sounds too good to be true. Almost always in the end, I find out it's not true. Or at least it's not as true as it looks on the surface. But this is one that's different. And here's the thing, it costs you almost nothing. Likely you have everything you need except maybe 1 or 2 ingredients at your house. So this is something, an experiment that you could run. It wouldn't cost you a lot of money. It wouldn't take a lot of time. It might make a big difference in how you feel during cold and flu season or when you're not sleeping well for another reason. So the tea is fresh ginger, fresh turmeric. Use a hand grater, grate them down. Add in some fresh black pepper. Put it in a saucepan, fill the saucepan with water, bring it to a boil, immediately shut it off. The thing is, with fresh turmeric, everything it touches, it will stain yellow. Right? And one quirk about this tea, you bring it to a boil, you immediately turn it off. One, because it doesn't need to cook more than that. But two, because it will boil over in a heartbeat. It'll make a hell of a mess. Now, should that happen to you, because it can also, as you hand grate it, it can give you make you look like you got an old smoker's nicotine stains on your fingers, right? But for turmeric stains, the kryptonite is bleach. So in my family, we use Clorox cleanup. You don't have to use Clorox cleanup. Any bleach solution will turn the turmeric stain bright red, and then it'll wash off. All right, start to come back to center first. So I'm going to walk my hands with my blocks. Start drawing your left hip back behind you until you can unwind your right leg, come back into your tabletop. Change sides. Step your left leg forward. Maybe left hand behind that left heel. Scoop, scoop, scoop. That left heel forward. Maybe tuck your toes under your right foot. Walk that right knee back behind you. And then with or without blocks, start to walk your hands over to your left. Right, so what are some circumstances where you're probably not sleeping consistently and you probably genuinely can't do much about it? I've never had children, but my understanding is that, like with newborns, that's really common. New parents often, the way it's described to me, often don't really sleep a full night of sleep for sometimes a year and a half. That might be an occasion, but I drink this. I drink it during cold and flu season. I drink it if I start to get a cold. I drink it if I'm not sleeping well. I have nervous system issues like anxiety and such that sometimes gives me fits with my sleeping. Right? That doesn't mean we don't need to fix whatever's keeping us from sleeping, right? If it's fixable, but it might mean that we use this practice in the interim. Right now, this is it's late January 2022, and the Omicron variant of COVID-19 looks like it's starting to slow down a little bit, but there's a lot of cases in Houston. And so I'm drinking this tea almost every day. Now, you can drink too much. You can drink too much. It's like ginger and turmeric are very heating foods. So two ways you could look at this. You could look at this through the yogic teaching of the gunas. And if you looked at these foods through the lens of the gunas, we would have to say that both ginger, turmeric, well, and black pepper for that matter, are rajasic. They're very high energy. Or if you looked at this from a standpoint of Ayurveda, you would say they were pitta activating, right, which is the fire and water element. So if you have too much, you could create some gastrointestinal issues related to heat. So like loose stools and really hot, miserable, uncomfortable diarrhea. And I will tell you, I sometimes drink like when I feel like I might have something coming on or during cold and flu season. Sometimes I drink a quart and a half of this tea a day with no ill effect. So I really think you would have to drink a lot of it to have this effect. But I like full disclosure, hashtag overshare, I have had that happen. So you should know what you're getting into. But that's one hack. Here's another. There's pretty good research that when we're sick or when we have something coming on, if we elevate the feet by 12 degrees while we're sleeping, it improves the function of the glymphatic system, not the lymphatic, but the glymphatic, which is a process that removes, the way that I understand it, removes some waste materials from the folds of the brain and other things. But many people, many healers I know also recommend, even when you're awake, like if you're going to be laying on the couch watching Netflix anyway, what's it going to hurt to elevate the feet? Start to walk your hands back to center. Again, I'm going to walk my blocks with them. Come back into your tabletop shape. And then we're going to take a rest on the other side. I'm just going to pivot for this. Come down onto your belly. Go post your arms out to the side. Elbows in line with the shoulders. Fingers reaching up past the top edge of your mat. Rest your right temple on the mat. Lift your left knee up in the general direction of your left elbow. Half frog. Lower your lifted knee back down in line with your right knee. Bring your hands under your shoulders. Lift up into a tabletop. Grab a bolster. You might not choose to use it, but I'd like you to have it. From your tabletop, place the bolster such that a third or so of the bolster is below the level of your wrists. And then slide your right knee to the far right hand edge of your mat. So I don't care how close to parallel that right shin is. I do care that the right knee is wide. Tuck your toes under your left foot. Walk your left knee long. Now look, as a general rule of thumb,
today in sleeping swan or yin or half pigeon and vinyasa, I'm going to take this sitting up because having my joint stacked, head floating over shoulders, over hips, increases the weight that facilitates gravity drawing it down toward the earth. But today I'm more interested in immune function. So I'd rather you lower down onto your bolster, release your arms forward. One other thing that I was thinking of that I wanted to share is that I've recently learned that the fascia, this layer of connective tissue that with the superficial fascia, we have it from the crown of our head to the soles of our feet. And there are deeper levels of fascia too. But the fascia seems to have a much greater role related to immune system than I ever would have thought. So practices where we restore a healthy balance and shape of the fascia, such as yin yoga, it seems to me would also help increase immune function. But I need to confess again, I'm not a biologist by training, by academic training. There's a degree of speculation there on my part. We're going to start to make our transition to the other side. So walk your hands up under your shoulders, lift yourself up, come back into a tabletop, and then slide your left knee forward, slide it wide to the far left-hand edge of your mat. Tuck the toes under your right foot, walk that right leg long behind you. And again, it's not wrong to stay lifted up. And this is what I would typically do. But for today, I'm more interested in immune system response, which means lengthening out the bottoms of your armpits. So maybe lower your heart down to your bolster, reach your arms out over your head. So one other thing that I'll mention about immune system function that probably is obvious, is we have several layers of protection with the immune system. And the first layer of protection, it seems so obvious, but it's the skin. So like for a virus or something that a bacteria or something that's going to hurt us, it, it first has to penetrate some kind of opening in the skin. So eyes are a very common vector, nose and mouth, any opening. But think about cuts. Like this time of year, I get a bit of a vata imbalance, which looks in the wintertime like dry skin. And sometimes I'm not very attentive with it, and it develops these cracks that bleed. Right, that's a potential opening for an infection. So be really attentive to your skin. Take great care of your skin. And then the second layer of defense is called the innate immune system. This is like a SWAT team, right? So if your body detects some kind of invader, then it'll be flooded with things like white blood cells, killer T cells, and other things like that to try to isolate the threat, destroy the threat, and surround it with tissue. So when you get a cut that gets a bit of an infection,
and it gets like white pus around it. Those are the white blood cells and often the dead invader that is killed off. But let me circle back to what I started with, this idea that immune system function, like the things that we can do on a daily basis most of the time to really maximize our immune system function, they're pretty banal. Can you imagine walking up to the top of a mountain in the Himalayas and you get a chance to ask the sage one question and you say, how can I stay healthy? And the sage says, get more sleep and eat sauerkraut 4 or 5 times a day, right? It would be a little unsatisfying, but that also seems on this topic to be very, very accurate. Right, walk your hands under your shoulders. Lift yourself up to tabletop again. Remove your bolster, slide that off to the side. Come onto your right side. And our final pose of our yin practice today is going to be a twisted root variation. So right side, rest your right ear on your right bicep. Put a generous bend in your knees. Float the fingers of your left hand up toward the stars, and then turn the palm of your left hand to face behind you. Now, drop the palm of that left hand to your lower back. Start folding your left shoulder down toward the earth as you thread your right hand in between your shoulder blades. Please don't worry too much about that right arm, like what's happening with the right hand. What we're really looking for is a pillow for the back of your head. Your right forearm makes a nice pillow for this function. It's just the right size. So we will not be here long. So right away, if you want to add sensation, if you want more in the shoulder, slide the back of your left hand higher up your spinal column. The higher up your spinal column you slide that hand, the more sensation you'll get. Or straighten your left leg, let gravity draw that big toe edge blade of your left foot down to the earth. That's way too much for me. But in your body and in your practice, that might be just fine. Just a note on our seated immune system practice that we did before we got into the yin shapes. We were really looking at some of the glandular systems related to the immune system. So the lymphatic system, for example, the thymus gland, the lymph nodes, things like that. Right? If you've chosen to slide the back of your left hand higher up your spinal column, slide it back down to your lower back, lift your left shoulder, fold it up over your right, release your left arm along your side, straighten your legs, and then you can reach your arms up over your head, roll over onto the other side. Just so I can be facing the camera to demonstrate, I'm going to do a little break dance. On the left side, left arm reaches over your head, generous bend in your knees, float the fingers of your right hand up toward the stars, turn the palm of the right hand behind you, drop it into your lower back, back of the right hand touches the lower back, start folding your right shoulder down to the earth behind you, slide your left hand in between your shoulder blades. When we get into the final resting shape, I'm going to offer you some options, right? They are just options, friends. If I offer you options that don't sound good to you, ignore me, listen to the wisdom of your body. Your final resting shape can be in your seat, your belly, your back, or your side. Right, start to slide the back of your right hand back down to your lower back. Lift your right shoulder up, float it over your left, and then hands under your shoulders. Lift yourself up. Now, for the final resting shape, what I recommend, if you remember what we talked about with the flow of the glymphatic system, not the lymphatic system, but the glymphatic system, we want a 12-degree elevation of the feet. So I'm going to build a little bench out of 2 blocks and a bolster. I'd also recommend, just to maximize the lengthening of lymph nodes in the armpits, reaching your arms up over your head. And then come into stillness, balance 2 qualities at the same time, relaxation and alertness. Swallow 2 or 3 times for vagal toning. And then start to draw some deeper breaths. Moving bigger in your chest, in your belly on each inhale, and more full and complete on each exhale. And then with those deeper breaths, start to reanimate your body with movement. Maybe wiggle your fingers or toes, small movements to start. And then maybe transition from small movements into medium movements, maybe rotating the hands at the wrists, the feet at the ankles. And then if your body calls for it, transition from medium to large movements. That might look like a full body stretch. It might look like the soles of your feet on the earth, a bend in your knees, and dropping your knees from side to side. And then roll over onto either side, find a fetal position. Take 3 or 4 breaths, check in, notice how your physical body's feeling, notice too what the quality of your nervous system is now post practice. And then press yourself up into a seated position. Eyes could be gently open, softly open, they could be gently closed. Clap your hands together. Rub the palms of your hands together to warm them generously. And then place your left hand on your liver, so floating rib on your left rib cage. Right hand covers left. Feel the heat permeating from your warmed palms into your abdomen. And then from liver, transition your hands to your back. Cover your kidneys. Maybe tweeze your elbows together some. And then from the kidneys, the back of the neck, there's one Bodhi Jati vertebrae there. It's the C7. It's the lowest in the cervical spine. Cover that with both hands. Again, feel the warmth and heat from your hands permeating that C7 vertebrae in the back of your neck. And we're going to move through this one more time. Clap your hands together. Rub the palms together faster this time. Not necessarily rubbing the palms together faster. It may have been quite fast last time. We'll move through this sequence faster. Liver, kidneys, and the C7 vertebrae. From here, slice your hands down into heart center.
Thank you, friend, for making time to move and breathe with me. Thank you for trusting me to guide you through your practice. May this find you healthy and well. If you move to do so, draw your thumbs to the space between your eyebrows. Blessings to you and your family. And that concludes our practice for today. Friends, once again, I'm Chris. I'm from Transformation Nation Yoga and Wellness. Thank you for joining us for our Sunrise Yin Immune System Sequence 2. You're doing amazing. Keep going.